Frankly, the Pakistani strikes into Iran is perhaps the first time after the Iran-Iraq war that there have been direct attacks inside Iranian territory. But I think what happened a few days back was a major escalation from the Iranian side. The borders between Pakistan and Iran have not exactly been very tranquil. There have been huge problems along that border. It's a major smuggling route. After the Iranian attacks, the Pakistan army was being lampooned, it was being made fun of, there were memes being created. I think the army simply could not afford. It was a matter of survival, it was a matter of self-preservation for the Pakistan army to be seen to be doing something. If Iran does not hit back at the Pakistanis, then the message that will go in the region where, and it's a very difficult region in which Iran lives, and it's difficult in part because of what Iran has been doing. I think the message that will go to all the countries in the region is that, look, if you want to force some kind of a compellence on Iran, then you have to strike at the head of the snake. India does not have a dog in this fight. But frankly, I think if this thing starts expanding beyond what it already is, I think there would be serious concerns in India as well. Tensions in the region have suddenly spiked after Iran launched a couple of missiles and a drone attack on a terrorist training camp or a terrorist camp inside Pakistan, the Balochistan province of Pakistan. After which, 2 days later, Pakistan retaliated. They launched drones, some loitering ammunition, and backed by their fighter jets, they launched a counter-strike inside Iran on alleged terror camps inside Iran. So tensions are very high, and it seems like it's not very clear whether this drone for drone kind of a retaliation will end out here or it will escalate from here on. The Iranian attack was, of course, a major escalation. The borders between Pakistan and Iran have not exactly been very tranquil. There have been huge problems along that border. It's a major smuggling route. A lot of smuggling of Iranian oil and other stuff into Pakistan happens from this particular border. It's a border which is quite a favorite for human traffickers. All kinds of activities happen on this border, including movement of terrorists. In fact, terrorists on both sides. There are Baloch separatist groups which are allegedly based in Iran who have struck inside Pakistan and then gone back to their sanctuaries inside Iran. Similarly, there are Sunni extremist terror groups based in Pakistan which go and have launched some pretty spectacular attacks inside Iran. So the borders have been a problem, and there have been occasions on which the Iranians have carried out some cross-border raids, shallow forays into Pakistani territory by their special forces. There have even been shelling by mortars and other things inside Pakistan. But I think what happened a few days back was a major escalation from the Iranian side. Now, Iran, of course, has been feeling the heat ever since the war in Gaza started. Iran has been, in a manner of speaking, been cornered, but Iran has also opened up new fronts. We are seeing that in the Red Sea area, where the Houthis, who are supposed to be aligned with Iran, have opened up a new front which has started affecting the rest of the world. There is the Hezbollah front in Lebanon and in parts of Syria, which has also been activated. So that's been happening, and on the other hand, Iran itself has been facing some major terror strikes inside the Sistan Balochistan province, but also in other parts of Iran. And Iran has been blaming a menagerie of terror groups for what has been happening. So just before Iran launched an attack in Pakistan, it also launched attacks in Iraq and in Syria. But I think the Pakistan angle is important from our point of view sitting in India, because it's virtually next to our border. And on this, I think the Iranian calculation was that this will be a relatively costless operation, in the sense that they felt that Pakistan has actually become a very weak state, which is a fact. But the problem is, a weak state is often also a very desperate state. It is true that Pakistan already has 3 open fronts, and these are the 3 eyes that Pakistan is facing right now. It is India, it is the Islamists based in Afghanistan, and it is of course Imran Khan, against whom the Pakistan army is engaged in a virtual life and death struggle. And now suddenly you have the 4th eye front opening up, which is the Iran front. And I think Iran calculated that Pakistan will probably not be interested in opening up this front. They will make some noises and then they'll pipe down. But the Pakistanis, I think, had their own compulsions, just as the Iranians had. For Iran, of course, the compulsion was that the regime was being open to attacks from within, because of the kind of terror strikes that were happening, that Iran was no longer safe, that Iran was being encircled, and they needed to do something to get out of that, to show that they are very much in charge, very much in command, that they have the capacity and the ability to hit from where they think attacks are coming into them. On the Pakistani side, again, there were some serious compulsions, not the least of which was the Pakistan army's own position inside Pakistan. After the Iranian attacks, the Pakistan army was being lampooned, it was being made fun of, there were memes being created, and at a time when the Pakistan army is desperately trying to carve an image for itself, take command of the country, in the sense they will have a civilian face, but the real power is going to be with the army. I think the army simply could not afford. It was a matter of survival, it was a matter of self-preservation for the Pakistan army to be seen to be doing something. They simply could not just use the normal diplomatic tools which they had used by downgrading relations with Iran, but they simply could not bank upon that to rehabilitate their image. Incidentally, by downgrading relations with Iran, Pakistan now, its 3 official frontiers, the one with China is not an official frontier in the technical sense, because it is parts of Jammu and Kashmir, occupied parts of Jammu and Kashmir, parts which actually give Pakistan a border with China. But its 3 official borders, and its 3 official neighbors, Pakistan has no diplomatic relations, or at least not full diplomatic relations, either with India or with Afghanistan, and now not even with Iran. But having this, but just downgrading of diplomatic relations would not have been enough. And I think for the Pakistan army, both from a reputational and a political angle, some kind of a counter-strike into Iran was necessary. But there was also a strategic angle to it. I think the Pakistanis felt that if they did not attack or did not retaliate in kind against Iran, then it would open up Pakistan to further attacks from other countries, not just Afghanistan but also India, because India has been watching what has been happening very carefully. We've had our own skirmish with the Pakistanis in 2019, and this was now the next step where Pakistan had to convey a signal, or wherever it could go, that Pakistan would hit back if this kind of action was taken against them. So I think that was the second compulsion for the Pakistanis. But even while they take this step, I think the Pakistanis would be desperately hoping that this is where it ends, that the Iranians hit them, they hit back, and matters rest out there. Because if this thing escalates, then Pakistan will be in trouble, because we must all remember something which the former Pakistan Army Chief General Bajwa had said to Pakistani journalists, that Pakistan was in no position to fight a prolonged war or get into a prolonged conflict with another state. It really is, it's living on fumes, so as to speak. So I think there is this hope in Pakistan that this does not escalate. On the Iranian side, the ball is now, of course, in the Iranian court, and one will wait and see how the Iranians propose to respond to the counter strikes by Pakistan. Now, for now, the Iranians have launched this massive exercise, military exercise along the Pakistan front. But this is a standard Iranian kind of a modus operandi, if you will, where when they face this kind of a tension, they try and signal that they are now mobilizing their troops, and this exercise business is something they've always done. They've done it in the past with the Taliban, way back in the 90s, when the Taliban had killed some 11 Iranian diplomats in Mazar-e-Sharif. The Iranians mobilized their army and said that they were holding these massive exercises on the front with Afghanistan. And at that time, many people thought that Iranians are actually going to take the war into Afghanistan. And then suddenly the Iranians backed off. They thought they'd made their point, and then they backed off. I suspect they are likely to do something similar with Pakistan. I don't think the Iranians also are in a mood to escalate this beyond a point. So after all the chest thumping, after all the fire and fury of their rhetoric, holding these exercises, this grand spectacle, making a show of force, I suspect that the Iranians will back down. I don't think they're going to take this forward. I would be a little surprised if this was to, there was to be the next strike and the Iranians were to get onto that escalation ladder. But there will be consequences for Iran. After all, if Iran does not hit back at the Pakistanis, then the message that will go in the region, and it's a very difficult region in which Iran lives, and it's difficult in part because of what Iran has been doing. I think the message that will go to all the countries in the region is that, look, if you want to force some kind of a compellence on Iran, you want to dissuade Iran from spawning these proxies of Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and what have you, then you have to strike at the head of the snake, as many people in the West call it. And I think there will be that particular issue that Iran will have to confront now, because frankly, the Pakistani strikes into Iran is perhaps the first time after the Iran-Iraq war that there have been direct attacks inside Iranian territory. There have been the surreptitious kind of terror attacks and bombings and what have you, but you haven't had one state actually fire into Iran and take out any targets in Iran. None that I can remember. Maybe there was one or two, but this is a significant development that has taken place. And if the Iranians back off right now, then the message to all the countries in the region will be that, look, maybe it's a better idea to not continue to underplay what Iran has been doing, and it might be a better idea to actually attack Iran inside Iran and then force it to back off. Now, if that message gains ground, then Iran would have really lost big time. So the dilemma for Iran is that, does it want to get into a prolonged kind of a conflict with the Pakistanis at this stage, when it has many other fronts open? Just as Pakistan has multiple fronts open, so does Iran. So does it also want to open this front with Pakistan? And there are going to be consequences of opening up another front, but there are going to be consequences of backing down at this point. there are two other players in the region who will be watching very closely what is happening. One is, of course, China. For China, the spat between Pakistan and Iran would be a matter of some concern, but they would also see it as an opportunity. After all, China is probably the only country in the region that has equities in both Iran and Pakistan, as in many other countries of the region. The kind of stature that the United States had in this particular region at one point of time, it simply does not enjoy anymore. But China is trying to position itself as the next big guy in the region. And this kind of a spat is an ideal opportunity for a country like China to step in, act as the big boy in the room, the mature person in the room, somebody who will separate these guys, bring them onto a table, kind of paper over their differences. And if China manages to do that, then it has inserted itself in this region in a big way, and it starts to fill the shoes of the United States in this particular region, because the United States simply has lost a lot of the goodwill and the kind of the power it exuded. I think that has been significantly degraded over the last few years. So one is this China factor which will come into play. The second is what happens to India. Now, India has issued a statement that was after the Iranian attack, where in a sense we did back the Iranians, and we said that we understand a country acting in self-defense. But frankly, India does not have a dog in this fight. Of course, if it's a choice of picking between Pakistan and Iran, I think the choice is very clear from India's point of view. But frankly, I think if this thing starts expanding beyond what it already is, I think there would be serious concerns in India as well, because as it is, we've seen the Red Sea route actually start closing down. And that really affects our foreign trade, that affects how we engage with the West, at least economically. And if now we see the region around the Persian Gulf also go up in flames, then it starts affecting us directly, in the sense that not that we are going to be participating in any kind of a conflict. I don't think that is what we have in mind. But it certainly puts us in a bit of a spot, because a lot of our energy comes from there. The petroleum and other stuff which we get from the Middle East comes from there. The stuff which we send to the Middle East goes through this particular route. And if this area starts getting disturbed, the way the Red Sea area has been disturbed, then there are consequences for the Indian economy. And that's not something that India would be looking forward to. So that puts us in a bit of a spot if this thing escalates beyond a point. But on the larger frame, it seems that the events that started unfolding after the terror strikes in Israel on October 7th, the hope was that that conflict remains limited to Gaza. But I think that conflict is in a kind of a slow motion starting to expand. It's in Gaza, it's now we are seeing Lebanon and Syria also getting involved. We've seen retaliatory actions taking place on American bases in Iraq, in Syria. We've seen the Iran versus Pakistan conflict, and we've seen events in the Bab al-Mandab and the Red Sea, courtesy the Houthi rebels in Yemen. So the arc of instability is expanding and widening, and that is not something that India would be looking at, with some amount of pleasure, or we cannot afford to be sanguine about what is happening in this area, because it is literally our neighborhood, and if that gets disturbed, then India cannot remain untouched by what is happening out there.